If you're a fan of horror movies, you've surely seen at least one Stephen King adaptation in your life. King has created some of the scariest horror stories in the history of the genre, and we've all enjoyed the 70s and 80s adaptations of The Shining,
Here's Johnny,
Carrie, CBS's sci-fi television series Under the Dome. Pet Sematary is another of his works that has been adapted from book to film over the years. King was famously so upset with what he had written that he put the book in a drawer and eventually published it only to help fulfill a publishing deal he wanted out from. First published in 1983, the novel was adapted into a film of the same name in 1989 and again in 2019. And now comes Pet Sematary: Bloodlines. So it's about time we revisit the original story and perhaps the most terrifying inspirations behind it. Pet Sematary 2019 had its fair share of alterations from the original book, but for the most part, it's a faithful retelling of the core story, down to the chilling inclusion of an ancient creature known as the Wendigo. The story follows the Creed family, Lewis, a doctor who moves with his wife and two young children from a bustling city to the small town of Ludlow, Michigan. Unfortunately, their estate includes a cursed pet cemetery.
Yeah. I spelled it wrong.
Where Ludlow's children perform macabre burial rituals for their deceased pets. Lewis is responsible for burying his daughter Ellie's beloved cat, Church, after he is hit by a tractor trailer just outside their driveway. His neighbor Judd, a longtime resident of Ludlow, pulled him aside and told him a strange little piece of history about the Creed's new property. According to Judd, if you wander into the forest area outside the pet cemetery, and if you bury your dead animal in a certain area, the animal will return. So what is the mystery behind this piece of land? Native Americans occupied the land, but eventually fled to escape the fearsome Wendigo. In Pet Sematary and The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon, King introduces the primordial demon as an antagonist and explains that it haunted the Algonquin tribe, as well as the Micmacs and others. He is also responsible for the curse of the earth, which now causes everything to rise from the dead. Now, what really is the Wendigo in mythology? A Wendigo is a creature from Native American folklore, specifically Algonquin-speaking tribes. The word itself comes from the Algonquin word meaning evil spirit. Wendigo folklore has been passed down through generations, and it remains a popular topic and subject of much speculation among indigenous people and scholars. While the myth of the Wendigo varies from tribe to tribe, most Native American folklore describes the creature as a beast-like humanoid monster that lives in the coldest parts of the world. Some people say that the Wendigo is a cannibalistic monster that feeds on human flesh, while others believe it is a vengeful spirit that punishes those who break the laws of nature. In the cold, harsh conditions of northern winters, the threat of starvation always loomed large, so much so that cannibalism was not unheard of. Many scholars believe that the myth of the Wendigo was intended as a means to keep people from participating in such heinous acts. In some versions of the legend, a human transforms into a Wendigo after their spirit is weakened by extreme conditions, such as hunger and cold. In other legends, humans become Wendigos when they're possessed by a prowling spirit in their weakest moments. Anyone giving into greed and excess was likely a candidate. In one particularly eerie version of the Wendigo lore, legend has it that if one dreams of the creature, the body may become vulnerable to possession by the Wendigo spirit, and once the possessed person consumes human flesh, the body begins its own grotesque transformation into a Wendigo. That's an unsettling version of the legend that might keep you up at night. So what does the Wendigo have to do with Pet Sematary? According to legend, the Wendigo people lived in the Far East as far as Canada. In King's story, the creature eventually encountered the Micmac Cemetery in Maine, which would eventually become part of the town of Ludlow. In Pet Sematary, it is explained that the Wendigo cursed the Micmac Cemetery and the last Creeds survived, ensuring that any corpse placed in the ground would rise within a day as a malevolent shell. It is not surprising that the Micmac tribe abandoned Ludlow. Judd mentions that his childhood dog, Biffer, came back meaner and much more aggressive than before, causing his father to put him back down. In King's novel, a soldier named Timmy Batterman is buried in Micmac Cemetery by his grieving father and returns possessed by the Wendigo. Judd and the other townspeople beg Timmy's father to kill his survived son, which he eventually does before committing suicide. In the 2019 remake, the Wendigo does not appear as prominently as it does in the book. Judd briefly mentions it in conversation with Lewis as they look through a book about Native American legends in their area of Maine, and roars can be heard in the woods as they bring in the body of Church to the cemetery.
What was that? It's just a loon.
It roared again when Lewis also brought his daughter's body there. He looked through the forest and seemed to see the creature's shadow, but the creature never appears on screen in flesh. Although it's no secret that animals can't actually come back to life once they've passed away, there might be more truth to Stephen King's 1983 novel Pet Sematary than you think. So let's separate the fact from the fiction. Although he enjoyed living in the rural Northeast with his family, the house they rented was on an extremely busy road. Despite being warned that the road has used up a lot of animals by his Judson Crandall-like neighbor, King found his daughter's cat, Smucky, whose name you may remember from the tombstone in the movie, dead on a neighbor's lawn shortly after moving in. And to make things even scarier, his neighbor told the writer that there's actually an animal cemetery where other local kids have buried the animals they lost on the high road. But the scarier thing? One day, King's toddler son walked toward the road while the family was flying kites in the yard. Even if King was able to catch up, the experience left a lasting impression on him. He wrote, "Part of my mind has never escaped that horror. I simply took existing material and added a terrible what if. In other words, I found myself not only thinking the unimaginable, but also writing it." Of course, in the book, the toddler character isn't so lucky. Gage Creed walks out onto the busy road next to the family's new house and is hit by a pickup truck. The reboot actually puts a pretty big spin on this particular twist, but the story is still as dark and frightening as ever. Excited for the upcoming prequel to Pet Sematary 2019? What is your favorite part of the story? Comment down in the section below, and don't forget to like and subscribe.